Thank you everyone for coming to the Sanitation and Environmental Protection Subcommittee, or Committee Board 6. My name is Pedro Rodriguez, and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight's agenda is actually very short. We're just going to be getting a presentation from a group called Beyond Plastics. Rashna is going to be representing that group, and she's going to be talking to us about two bills that are currently in the state Senate and Assembly. It's the same bill, just one on each chamber. The bills are around something called producer responsibility, which is a generic term that essentially aims to hold plastic manufacturers accountable in one way or another for the plastic they produce. But these two bills essentially try to implement that in a couple of ways, and Rashana is going to be talking to us about that. So take it away.
Thank you, Pedro. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate your time. I'm going to just share my screen. If I can, give me a second. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we are. Do you all see the first opening slide, the cover slide?
Yeah, I can see it.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. I can't see you all anymore the way so if you just speak up, you can feel free to interrupt me if you have a question. I don't mind at all. Okay, I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Rachna Shah. I've been a part of Beyond Plastic since 2020. During the COVID pandemic, I took the founder of Beyond Plastic, Judith Enck. I took her class on plastic and plastic pollution. And I was so motivated to help make a change that I've been on now for 5 years running. No intention of stopping anytime soon either, because what I've learned over these 5 years is that the intersection of a lot of our different crises are tied with fossil fuels and environmental justice and so many different things. Corporate greed, for example, a lot of those intersect at plastics. So even though it just seems like this everyday thing that we use, and we often don't think there's like any other alternatives, is actually something that the underlying issue is a story about a lot of forces that I will touch on in a shorter presentation given the time. But if anyone wants to know more, feel free to write down my email address right here, and I'm happy to do a longer version or answer questions one-on-one. I should also mention my profession is I'm a zero waste consultant and educator. So I do this, as my profession. I've been working with schools and corporate offices and some restaurants and nonprofits. So kind of the whole gamut. Plus I do this advocacy. I go up to Albany a few times a year to work on this, and I work with different assembly members and state senators here in New York. So, okay, so let's jump into it. All right, but I wanted to leave this blank for a second because I don't always know if people know what plastics are made from. So what in your mind, just, you can call out if you want, or just in your mind, like, what are plastics made out of? So there's two broad categories of things of what it's made out of. So they are fossil fuels. So it used to be petroleum oil, could be coal, could be oil, and not coal, sorry, could be, and now more it's ethane gas that is fracked. But that is about 50% of what plastics are made out of. And the other 50-ish, 30 to 60% is chemicals, because how do you turn petroleum or a gas even into a plastic bottle that we hold in our hands, right? So they have to put in lots and lots of different chemicals into those materials in order to make plastics. Now, it's not a standardized set of chemicals, and it's actually 16,000 plus different chemicals, and only 4,000 of those have actually been studied to monitor or assess their toxicity. Of those 4,000 that have been studied, 3,000 have already been deemed as toxic. So it's not a really great situation when we think about that, especially when we're talking about plastics that contain our foods and beverages. Because as you may know, like when I put certain foods into a plastic container and then I pour it out, I notice that the container has turned a color, right? Whether it's like yellow or red, if it's like tomato sauce, maybe it turns a little bit red. And so this is how you know that the food is leaching into the plastic because it's picking up the color. Sorry, a little bit under the weather. This is how you kind of know that those chemicals that are in the plastic are also leaching back into the food or beverage. So this is a huge problem. And it's just not studied enough, although it's actually right now there's a lot of research on this. But compared to other, especially, we live in a society where it's not the precautionary principle, as is often used in Europe. It's make first, allow people to get sick, allow those sick people to like organize and potentially sue, and then make a change. And even then, that changes in like 20 years, right? So I'm so sorry. And so we kind of end up being in a situation where it feels very vulnerable to, sorry, let me take a cough drop. It feels very vulnerable to consume these foods and beverages when, there's probably not enough oversight into how these containers are affecting the foods and beverages that we consume. Another thing to know is that plastic is very, very hard to recycle. So I've been seeing a lot and hearing a lot that, hey, recycling is a scam. Don't even recycle. I see them putting the whole bin into the regular garbage. Don't even bother. And that's only partially true. Our metals, our glass, our paper, those are all, well, metal and glass is infinitely recyclable. And paper is not infinitely recyclable, but once it can no longer be recycled, usually that's when it's like tissue paper. At that point, it's an organic material that can either go in the compost or it'll eventually return to the earth, right? But on the other hand, plastics are actually not recyclable. They're not actually technically recyclable because the definition of recycling means that the original product you start with, once you recycle it, the recycled product is of the same quality as the original. So when you use an aluminum can and it gets recycled into another aluminum can, it has the same quality. It does not degrade. Plastic, on the other hand, does. Each time you recycle it, it gets of a poorer and poorer quality. And so you can only recycle it about a handful of times. Um, and it's just really, it's not a good product to recycle in terms of that true meaning of recyclability. You're dealing with numerous components that make it almost impossible to design an effective system, right? There's also, when I talked about those 16,000 chemicals, it's like different plastics have different chemicals, so they cannot be grouped together easily, especially if you've been to a recycling facility. It's often mechanized, right? It's like there's some human aspect to it, but it's often machines that read what kind of material it is. And it's hard for even machines to know which type of plastics need to go together in order for better recyclability, right? Nearly half of the plastic produced every year is for single-use packaging, and recycling plastic is ineffective. Our national effective recycling rate is less than 6% in this country. I mean, I don't know about you, but any business in the world that has a success rate of 6% is not succeeding. And yet we still prop up with our tax dollars, we prop up this industry and we prop up the recycling system. And it's not really worth there's no bang for our buck there. Furthermore, so plastics can either be buried and landfilled, which is the most common way they get um, uh, disposed of. They can be burned, which is a horrendous way to deal with plastic because, as you notice, it's made out of fossil fuels, so it's very flammable, it's very toxic. But the third way is it becomes loose, like litter, basically. So I do live in Forest Hills. I am a half a block away from Sam Berger's district. And every day when I'm driving down the GCP service road, it is just flush with litter. No matter what, even after I see the sanitation truck comes like, I don't know, once a month maybe. It is within less than a week, it is just disgustingly flush with litter. And I think there's also wind pathways where I live. I've been here for 10 years and litter is just rampant, right? So most of the litter um, goes into sewers, and sewers goes into our waterways. And then our waterways connect into the oceans. And that's why we have, you might have heard these Great Pacific Garbage Patch, these like giant garbage patches that are like bigger than the size of Texas, where all these plastics kind of come together and create havoc because they ultimately, because of solar radiation, they break down, and then they break down so small that fish thinks that it's fish food, and fish and other sea animals ingest it, and then oftentimes we ingest those fish or those sea animals, or it goes into our salt mines. There are microplastics in our salt mines, right? So I'll talk about microplastics in a second, but it's becoming a huge problem. So 15 million tons. I actually believe that number is 18 million now. The slide might be old. But 15 million tons of plastic enter our oceans every year. So as I was mentioning earlier, microplastics. So because like if you saw a piece of paper littered on the side of the road, it would eventually break down and it would eventually return to Earth, and those materials would not harm our planet because it's an organic material. It's made from a tree. But plastic, since it's made from petroleum, or sorry, fossil fuels, it's not an organic material. It's an inorganic material. And so it doesn't actually break down into Earth, it breaks down into microplastics. In other words, it never breaks down. It just becomes too small for us to really notice. So a microplastic is when it's 5 millimeters or less. And then a nanoplastic is further, it's even smaller. It's not visible to the human eye. And that's when you would need a microscope to see. It's so small. So in other words, there are these tiny little microscopic plastics in our environment where we wouldn't even see it, right? It would just look like perfectly fine to us, but we might be totally surrounded by them. Also trying to keep this more local to New York. So New York spends $500 million a year on waste exports. That's clearly money that if we just produced less waste, we could save a lot of money. Plastics and packaging make up 40% of the New York City waste stream. That is a staggering chunk of our city's waste. And waste transfer stations are located throughout the city, and they have lots of packaging. And also, what these transfer stations means that lots of trucks are going in and out of them. They're basically like the middle point between collection and final destination. And so the people who live near there, it's a lot of extra methane in the air and CO2 because of the emissions from the truck, as well as maybe the emissions from the waste itself. So that's also a problem. Environmental justice is also a huge issue. If you see here, this is in our state, we have 10 incinerators, which is more than any state in the country. And 7 out of 10 of these are located in environmental justice communities, which means low income or Black and brown communities or indigenous communities. And that's actually done, it's not just like a coincidence, it's by design. These incinerator owners, they specifically look for communities that are going to, you know, not have the time or the resources to fight back, right? And so this is how it's all, that's how it is for landfills, that's how it is for waste transfer stations that I just mentioned. So EJ is such a prevalent thing in waste, but and it needs to be considered. These communities face higher rates of cancer, asthma, childhood leukemia, low birth weight, and other serious health issues. So we have to think about our fellow community members here in New York. And so I want to give a solution. Like, I took Judith's class and I was very horrified. I mean, this was just a really small snippet into what I learned, but the more you learn, it's very, very nefarious. It's very coordinated, and it kind of feels like we are powerless to do anything about it, but actually we're not. We're actually not. So here the Beyond Plastics has worked with Senators Harckham and Assemblymember Glick to create this Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act. And these are the numbers of the act. You know, the other day I was looking at a product and it said, because of California's Prop 65, we are required to disclose that this has low amounts of potentially cancerous materials. And so that is an example of one state that has a lot of power and a lot of size, that its law, its state law, is now the standard for everyone. And I'm so thankful to California, because had it not been for their proposition passing, I would not have known that that product may have these toxic chemicals. And so that's kind of the goal with this. We here in New York City, we are a powerful state. We have the population and we have the industry strength to have an effect on the entire country here. This would be the most powerful, the most strongest Packaging Reduction Act in the country, the strongest EPR, they call it EPR bill in the country, which is extended producer responsibility. So anyway, let me tell you what it's about. So basically there's 3 or 4 main things. It's going to reduce plastic packaging by 30% in 12 years. So that's huge. A lot of bills that try to tackle environmental things they just say, hey, shift to recyclability. Make sure it's recyclable. But really, those two of the reduce, reuse, recycle, it's really in that order, right? Reduce is our strongest solution to environmental stuff. Reuse is our second, and recycle is actually a third. It's the least effective of the 3. It's still good, but this bill focuses on reduction. We just want companies to actually use less packaging, and we're giving them 12 years to do that. And it's like phased in. So there's different goals every 2 years, right? So this should not, I mean, I remember when there's shrinkflation, those companies changed their packaging like lickety split. They did it really quickly and they were able to snub us out of an extra 1 ounce or 2 ounces of beverage, and they would charge the same price, right? So in my opinion, based on what I've seen, I don't think they need 12 years. And yet we were trying to be fair to the manufacturers and be like, you know, let's give you some time. The remaining packaging must be reused or recycled effectively at a 75% rate. That's much higher than what exists now. It makes the companies pay municipalities for the waste management of packaging. And this is like a little bonus thing. It reduces some of the toxic chemicals. So it gives us consumers some protections where we didn't have any. Any company, and just so you're wondering, any company that makes less than $5 million or produces less than 2 tons of packaging annually would be exempt, right? The requirement kinks, I talked about that. And there's a focus and an encouragement on reusable and refillable packaging. So we're always also thinking about an eye to the future, and, you know, we don't want it to just end there, right? We want it to continue to get better. Then if you buy a product The packaging it comes in by the manufacturer. That's its primary packaging. And then if you get it from, say, Amazon or Walmart, and the box that comes in is your secondary packaging. So the bill would also ask for secondary packaging to be reduced by 50%, because we all know, we have all gotten things in the mail where we're like, this is like an obscene amount of packaging. It's just completely unnecessary. Finally, it will require 75% of the remaining packaging to be reused or recycled by 2052. Okay. Second thing, this bill would save taxpayers money. Company, excuse me. Companies covered under the law will pay fees to cover the waste management of their packaging. So recyclers no longer have to be like flooded with kind of worthless plastic waste, because in a recycling facility, something is only worth something if there is a market to sell it after it's been processed, right? So a lot of that plastic, there was no markets for it anymore. So it was just worthless, and they would still have to process it and put it through their whole operations and not really get any return on that. So that just saves the taxpayers money when we eliminate some of those worthless plastics. Like I said, there was exemptions about the 5 million in sales. This means 95% of farms are exempt. Also, agricultural cooperatives with fewer than 50 employees that produce dairy products, infant formula and medical foods would be exempt. Products regulated as drugs, medical devices, or dietary supplements, animal biologics, including vaccines, pesticide packaging, packaging used to contain hazardous or flammable products, architectural paint containers, and any beverages are actually exempt, because that is handled by another bill, which is the bottle bill. And these are two like sibling bills. We really need for both them to pass together if possible, but we'll take one. And so this 2025 report found that in the first 10 years, the bill will save our state $1.3 billion, with New York City saving $818 million. Consumer Reports found that EPR bills do not increase costs for customers, and that's the first thing. Someone like Sam Berger believes that this might, and it has shown through multiple studies that that is not the case. And packaging actually makes up less than 5% of the cost of an item. So we believe that this is just kind of a lot of what's the word? Uproar over a non-issue. And that third provision about the toxic chemicals. So right now it's these 14 or 15. So look at these: phthalates, bisphenols, PFAS. Oops, sorry. PFAS, heavy metals. Wouldn't you just want these to be banned from our plastic containers? I mean, we all know little children like chew on plastic, right? So every time they do, they could be ingesting one or more of these chemicals. So if we reduce them, that's just a win for consumers. Finally, it creates this strong definition of recycling. Companies will not be able to count any incineration or chemical recycling. It won't count as recycling. So it means when you're told something is being recycled, it is actually being recycled. So who supports this bill? 73% of New Yorkers, according to a Siena poll, which was just this year earlier. 30 plus environmental justice groups, including the Bronx Council on Environmental Quality. 300 plus civic, environmental justice, health, and community groups, including the NAACP, NYPIRG, the League of LWV, the American Lung Association, and Pediatrics. 130 plus faith leaders. The New York City Council supports it. The New York City Mayor supports it. The New York State Association of Counties does, and 27 and counting counties, towns, and community boards. So this is our ask of you, to pass a resolution of support and send it to CB6's state legislators, which are Sam Berger, Andrew Hevesi, and Catalina Cruz, and also to your state senators in this district, Michael Gianaris, Jessica Ramos, Leroy Comrie, and Joseph Adabo Jr. We already have a draft resolution, which just needs a little bit of, customizing. I sent that to, I forgot,
Yeah,
you
we
have
got it, and I believe I sent it to the to all the
perfect.
members.
And I can resend it if anything, or we can work with you if you want to finesse it in a certain way. But that's like pretty much the standard language of these resolutions. And that's really it. And then, sorry, there's just one slide. Why now? 75% of people globally want to ban single-use plastics. A lot of these plastics end up in their countries because we ship our waste to developing nations, and then 73% of New Yorkers support this bill too. So that's actually the last slide. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Shana.
Yeah.
Definitely, microplastics it has been in talks, I guess in talks for like a while now,
Yeah.
and it kind of just reminds me, it's an interesting, uh, I don't know, factoid, I guess you could say, because I was reading a while ago how back when we were putting like lead in gasolines, there was
Hmm.
lead everywhere. And the way that they found out that there was lead everywhere was there was this guy that was doing like an experiment where he was measuring uh, like crystals in a mountain, and he was trying to measure the amount of lead in it because that would tell him like the age of the crystal. But what he
Okay.
found was that there was lead all over the crystal,
Oh my God.
and he was saying how could that be? There shouldn't be this much lead in the environment. It's supposed to be like layered. And eventually, this guy found out that what was happening was that there was just lead everywhere because of the gasoline, and it was like in remote mountains. And then a couple of months ago, I was reading how they were finding microplastics up in the Everest and like in the
Yeah.
tallest mountains of the world where there's no humans.
Yes.
So, so it's kind of reminds me like we're like in that stage again
You you're
where
so
it's
you're
just
so spot
everywhere.
on. It is. And I have visions of 20 years from now, the whatever Celino and Barnes Jr. saying like, "Do you have, cancer from microplastics?" Like it's such an it's crazy. It's just we know that this is there and we don't know the effects. So why are we allowing ourselves and our children to be guinea pigs to this experiment? So that's my motivation for working on
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I do have a couple of questions, but I'm gonna let the committee see if anyone has any questions.
Sure.
Yeah, so I do. Hi, this is Maggie. So my question is, I see one of the pictures you had was like in supermarkets where we have like the fruits and veggies cut up and what have you. What's the alternative of storing this in a container that's keeps them fresh and we can take home?
Yeah. So our dream at Beyond Plastics is that you know, there would be, if cut fruit is the necessity, that it would be like a buffet style, and you put it into reusable containers, right? That might be far off. Honest,
That's
I
far off.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just saying the long term vision. But that being said, like, a lot of this is like convenience culture. So when a fruit is already pre-cut, then of course it needs a new container. So of course, we understand different families have different time constraints, but it's just easier to get the fruit and cut it at home, and then you can skip the plastic bags. There are reusable bags for our fruit. So I mean, I'm very hyper conscious of this. So when my children were little, I did use plastic. This was also before I took this course, but I think when children are little, there's concerns of them breaking things. But as soon as they got old enough, like if I can avoid, and we even go to takeout places, I form relationships with people. I'm able to give them my own container, or I ask them to give me food in a to stay plate, and then I scoop it into my own glass to go container, right? So there are ways we can get by, but I mean, our systems are completely designed around plastic. So none of what I said to you is easy or even accessible for some people, and I get that. But I'm at the point where I believe plastics is like exposure. It's like sun exposure. It's cumulative, right? It builds up. So if you got too exposed one day, you might want to be a little extra cautious the next few days for sun exposure. So I look at it very similarly with plastic. It's not like I'll never drink out of plastic, but I'm always carrying my reusable containers around, because I just, from the health perspective, that's my motivation.
Yeah, for me, I'd love to hear what the alternatives are, something that's tangible. Because if you think about different areas, for people who live like away from the cities, your
Hmm.
suggestions may work because they're driving and what have you, they may be able to, and it's still very inconveniencing. Over lunch hour, where would I have to, if I want to go pick up lunch, where would I have to take a plate or with me and all that stuff? So, and I know in the past couple of years they've reduced the amount of plastic being used, and that's why it's lighter. So
Hmm.
I've seen progress in that end.
Hmm.
So before I personally can support this, I'd love to see tangible solutions around this. Yes, I can get a whole fruit and cut it at home, but do I need a whole fruit, cut it at home, and then throw half of it out? Doesn't make sense. Um, do I want to go to a buffet? No, because buffet can only be fresh for a certain time before they have to throw it out.
Hmm.
So understanding all those different things from my perspective, I'd love to see beyond,
Plastics.
yeah, like what are the tangible solutions around what we currently use? Yes, we've had a big reduction. Like in New York City, we no longer use plastic bags.
Yeah,
We
but let me tell you a little bit about the plastic bags. For many years, the enforcement of that was not happening. We actually had to work really hard with the DEC and make several complaints about many establishments not following that rule, right? So
and then
passing
this,
a law is step one, and enforcing it is really step two. But I've noticed, like, I've been living here for 10 years. I all the time would notice plastic bags in the trees, and now I don't really anymore.
yeah,
So these things actually do work. And if we wait for exactly perfect solutions before we pass them, we're not going to get to the change fast enough. Even this 30% in 12 years, it was supposed to be 50% in 10 years, but we already reduced the percentages in anticipation of Hochul vetoing this bill. Right. So there's so many concessions made along the way to appease different industry people and different politicians, and we are just watering it down so that by the time something passes, it's not even that effective anymore. I mean, we'll
yeah,
take what we can
Yeah.
get, but it's kind of
Uh,
pathetic.
if I can, if I can interject, Roshana, because I
Mhm.
definitely understand Maggie's concern here in what is the alternative. Now, you did speak about, for example, um, one alternative that will probably happen to this is that there may be a reduction in how much cut fruit is being sold, just because some manufacturers might just be like, oh, we don't want to do that anymore because it's too expensive, which means that whole fruit selling might become more common. But another thing that could happen is that, and this speaks more to what Maggie's asking in terms of what the alternative is we don't actually know, because one thing that funny thing about innovation is that for someone to innovate, they need to have a reason to innovate. At the moment, there is no incentive for a company to innovate away from plastic packaging because it's cheap and they don't pay the cost. We pay the cost in our health and
Mhm.
also the taxpayers.
That's exactly right.
But there may be an alternative out there that we just don't know about. That if, for example, we were to say, hey, you're not allowed to, uh, well, you are allowed to sell plastic, but you have to pay a fee. And
Hmm.
then a company out there might be like, oh, let me put some money into R&D, research and development, and then I'll find a different packaging thing that can actually do the same thing and it's not as harmful to the environment. And this has happened multiple times throughout history, where essentially some sort of restriction comes into an industry, and that industry innovates in order to get around that restriction. So I know it's not a very doesn't really answer your question, Maggie, but that is
Mhm.
also a possible alternative. That might be like there is an alternative out there that we just haven't
And
found out
actually,
yet.
I will say I went to a plastic and public health conference at over at NYU. It's every year during Climate Week, and I encourage, if anyone's interested, they'll have it again next year. But there were several alternatives out there. It's just they need more uh, motivation for manufacturers to actually use and invest those and be able to scale them. So plastics made out of seaweed, so no, it would have no fossil fuels. Now, I always take this with a grain of salt. I think that these things, we can't just switch from what, even, I mean, it is great to get off of, very great to get off of fossil fuels, but then what ends up happening is like a monoculture. Let's say every bottle is made out of seaweed bottles, then we might have a problem harvesting seaweed in the future, right? It's like anything that's, so the problem really is single use. But it's still worth doing and pursuing. It just, you need to have a little footnote on the alternative. But seaweed was one big one. I'm actually looking right now at the thing. Another one was made from algae. Another one is made from, what the heck is this? I don't know. I'm happy to send you this, Maggie. But banana fibers are you like, so there's things out there. They just need more investment. And it's not going to happen under our current system because plastic is cheap, period.
Yeah, I hear you. I personally would support it if I hear of possible tangible solutions.
But that's why it's also focused on reduction.
Yeah,
right?
I understand
So,
that, and
yeah,
I'm saying,
yeah.
just let me finish.
Yeah, sorry.
So what I'm saying, I'd possibly support it if I hear of tangible solutions, because yes, if you throw it out there and it's adopted, and we live in the city. It's a different lifestyle when you're not driving, when you're not, like, there's a different lifestyle when you have to carry things. Even just changing from plastic bags to paper bags. Some stores like CBS give you a bag that you can carry stuff in, right? You're not always carrying a bag with you, but you need to shop for stuff. But the stores are not providing you what you need. So being put in a position where you as a consumer don't have solutions because the people who are supposed to provide solutions are like, you know what, let it be. I don't want to put myself in that position. I don't want to put other people in that position. So when a change like this is being presented to me that requires my decision or my recommendation, I would love to see the tangible, as part of the presentation, tangible solutions around it in order for me to put my support behind it. Yes, I'm for less plastic, and I've seen plastic reduction over the course of the last 10 to 20 years, because this is a discussion that's been going on, and it's plausible. We have, like I said, we have thinner plastic containers being used. We have less takeaway containers being used. They're using paper and what have you. But when you look this particular picture that you just showed, and I was thinking, I was like, so some of us consume these things. How are we going to be able to consume these things if now we have to go to a buffet? A store like the one at the corner, they're not going to have a buffet of cut fruits. They'll just eliminate that if they cannot support it. So thinking about that, I would love to see beyond just individual solution, like something that shows, okay, fine, this is what we're looking to replace, and this is what we think would be a tangible solution. And yes, there'll be innovation coming up in the future, and there may be stronger solutions around it. And then for me, I think that would help me make a better decision around it.
I hear you. And especially, you're right. The picture here, I think, is talking about something where you maybe don't see an alternative. Now, I'll point to you, like, all the salad places in the city, they used to all have like the plastic salad bowls, and now often many of them have the fiber salad bowl, right? So like that, same thing. It's like it's still kind of coated in plastic because how else would it be waterproof? But ultimately, that's still very much reducing the amount of plastic, right? And that's what we're focusing on. I just picked up, I happened to get a new remote control the other day. But like, just thinking about, like, so this is mostly paper. It has a little plastic sheet, but it would just be like, how can we just use less material to cover? And some things, some things have more extra fluff that could easily be removed, and other things are already kind of efficient. Like, I think of an iPhone, it's already pretty compact, like there's not so much extra stuff. So that's actually addressed in the bill, in the fine print. But my point is, a lot of products just have to reduce. They have to just figure out ways to be a little bit leaner in the way that, and not have all that extra packaging. Whereas others, like this cut fruit, you would kind of need a whole new material. Or, you could just pay the fee, right? The manufacturer, not the consumer. So it's a little bit different for different products is my point. We're not trying to leave customers in the lurch, but just remember, I don't know how old you are, but it was not that many years ago. It was like 40, 50 years ago that we didn't have plastic at this level. And so, we had the reusable milk containers. Like that existed. That was a real system, right? We didn't have plastic bags for a long time. So people did bring their bags. So some of it is going to be the behavior change. And we know that talking about certain New Yorkers is different from others, but you got to think like the behavior change has to come and it will come. And sometimes it's with those, like, even I hate getting the plastic bag fee when I once in a while need it. I like it it motivates me to remember to bring mine. And so that's part of all of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tamara, do you have any questions?
Hello?
Oh, hello.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the cost, I guess, the cost to the smaller businesses, I was thinking about that. Like if they can't, do the packaging, it'll cost them a lot of money. Probably the larger businesses can afford to do that. I know I'm
You
taking
mean
a different shift, but I was just thinking about that.
you mean the
Like to
small
repackage, yeah.
you mean the
For the small businesses.
small businesses that are packagers, or are you talking about like the stores?
Like the stores.
The stores, yeah.
Okay.
So the stores are not paying for any of this. The stores are just holding the products. The manufacturers would have to pay for the packaging.
hmm
And that's why, so I put it back to the slide of the exemptions. We want to make sure this is not hitting, although ultimately, if you really think about it, over time, not initially, but over time, this would save a manufacturer money. Because if you're reducing the amount of resources you need, you will eventually, yes, you might have to change some of your machines to make things differently. But once that change is made, you're going to save money because you're using 30% less paper or plastic or seaweed or whatever what the heck is your packaging. So, but yeah, the exemption slide is up and it just talks about how companies that make a product that's worth sorry, companies that gross less than 5 million in sales are exempt. And then uh, companies with fewer than 50 employees in the dairy, infant formula, and medical foods industries are also exempt.
Yeah.
There's more than a few carve outs for small businesses.
Yeah, this was actually touching, and thank you, Tamara, for asking this, because I was actually curious about this. So when it says
hmm
like, company that has less than 5 million, and that means 95% of farms are exempt. Are farms producing plastic?
Yeah, I think if they like think in like the farmers market, they're not producing plastic. And so this would, even if you have 100% paper packaging, you're still you should still reduce it by 30%, right? We still want to use less of any material.
No, yeah, but what I'm
Is
confused
it the
about is
user? Is it the user or the producer? Because I think now it's coming back to that. Is it the user of the product or the producer?
The producer.
it's a producer. So when you say, uh, yeah, that's why I'm a bit confused.
Yeah.
Because I can understand, the little plastic containers that hold berries or something. The
Mm-hmm.
plastic containers are being made by the farm. That's being made by somebody else.
Uh-huh.
And the farmer's putting the berries into the container.
Mm-hmm.
So that container, if the company that's making that container makes more than $5 million a year,
No, it's not the container manufacturer. It's the product manufacturer.
So what do agricultural
They would,
cooperatives produce that are plastic?
can you repeat the question?
What do agricultural cooperatives produce that are plastic? Or yeah, the second bullet.
The second bullet. Dairy products. So, I mean, imagine they made milk and then they had it in a plastic jug. that they could continue, or they would not have to reduce their packaging by 30. They would be exempt from this whole bill, this whole law.
So the person that's paying, not person, sorry, the company that's paying the
To
fee
package.
is a company that's buying the product from the manufacturer of the plastic.
It's anybody who sells something in New York State.
Oh, so it's not the
That's
point. It's not the point of sale.
exactly.
So does that mean but would the supermarket have to pay as well, or would
Yeah.
that stop at the farmer or whoever is
I
producing the
think
food?
I think they would still have to pay
Yeah,
the
because the
smaller
supermarket
businesses.
is on that cuts the fruits and puts them in that container.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know about the soup. If I don't know if this law touches the cut fruit. That's so funny considering it's in the slide. And that slide, I've that slide has been in the presentation for 5 years, but it used to be way in the beginning to just show that you cannot shop at a grocery store
Touching
without having
plastic.
plastic.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's just impossible.
yeah, and I understand that. I think we were just a little confused as to who exactly, because I always thought the producer responsibility referred to the producer of the plastic itself, meaning the person making the packaging.
Oh,
But
no,
you're
no, no.
saying it's actually the consumer
Yeah,
of that plastic.
yeah. So think about like a bag of chips, or like or anything, this remote that I bought, right? So
Hmm.
this is my Philips.
Yeah,
So Philips would have to make sure that if they sold this to someone in New York, then their packaging would have to meet our and then, like I said, with the California thing, they might just go ahead and do it for the whole country at that point, right? Because
I
it's
think.
like we're not going to have separate things for they might not, that's up to them. But it's Philips in this case.
Okay, I understand. So that's okay, that was my question. I didn't
You're
understand
saying the
why you.
manufacturers raise the packaging prices, but doesn't it go back to the
To a
small
consumer.
retailers or the small businesses to like they will feel it in their profits because their margins will probably go, shrink.
Yeah, then it go
Well,
to the consumer.
but do they make more than $5 million? Because then they're not probably not struggling.
Yeah, it's probably like that's kind of where I was gonna go, because I was confused by the
Hmm.
small versus large.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
now that you're explaining that it is actually the consumer of the plastic that's paying the fee, now that makes sense. So this means that this wouldn't really affect most small businesses or medical. What else was
It
in here?
won't. It won't.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that
Yeah.
that
It's
makes more
for, and
sense.
it's meant for the big companies, right? And it's
Yeah,
meant for the Pepsis and the Mars and the all that. That's,
yeah.
we're not trying to hurt small businesses through the bill.
But okay, so to go back to the cut fruit, because a lot of supermarkets, I do believe, cut their fruit and they put in those packages. They would do that. In which case,
I'm gonna have to double check with
okay,
my team, because if the watermelon was bought and by this, I don't know. It's actually like a little bit of a gray area
okay,
that I'm a little bit unsure of.
yeah. I think we would like to know that. But
Yeah, I'll come back to you
yeah,
on that one.
but either way, I definitely do think that that you know, I am a big believer that innovation happens when you put restrictions on things which
Yeah,
are bad.
yeah.
Like we started putting restrictions on air quality, and
Hmm.
companies will say things like, "Oh, we have to pump out lead into the air, otherwise we can't make a profit, and then we'll raise the price of gas." And what happened? They just found out that you can actually make gasoline without lead, and now we don't have
Yeah,
lead in our gasolines.
exactly.
And same thing with like all of the other things that we've been, we used to dump everything into the East River, and
Mhm.
companies will say that you can't stop doing that, otherwise we will go out of business, and then they just
I know.
adapted. So,
And
uh,
I cut out a bunch of slides, but um, the nanoplastics, we're like breathing them in.
mhm,
The primary driver of that is tires are now made with plastic instead of just
yeah,
purely being rubber. And so every time a car drives, it's just literally emitting all of these nanoplastics that are invisible to the eye. We breathe them in, and now they're in our bodies, they're in our bloodstream, they're in our, they're just everywhere. And now they actually cross the blood brain barrier, and we're at the point where we have 7 grams of plastic in our brains. And I just don't want to be a guinea pig to this experiment, you know? And it's just very, and we have this chance for New York to be the first state that really, you know, tackles this legislatively. And other states, once one state does, other states, it gives them permission to copy paste a bill, knowing that one other state did. So this is our third year. Every year, no, sorry, the last 2 of the 3 years, we've gotten a majority of the assembly, a majority of the state senators to co-sponsor the bill, which is what you need to bring it up for a vote. And each year, Carl Hastie, the leader of the assembly, has not allowed it to come up for a vote. They always run out of time. And in the last 3 weeks of this last legislative session, they spent over $100 million, sorry, over $2 million with 100 lobbyists came, swarmed into the Capitol, and undid our work of 3 years. In 3 weeks, they undid it all. And it's just, we're all unpaid volunteers. You know, I'm not getting paid today. I never get paid. I've been like, so just think about what we're up against and the big, deep corporate greedy interests that just really want to keep poisoning us, in my opinion, with this unknown chemical. And I don't want to come to find out later on that now we have like a mass thing of whatever, of cancer or whatever. It's just really sick that they would just rather poison us than find out if the thing is going to make us sick first before they let it proliferate to this rate. It's just, it's a form of violence, in my opinion. But sorry, now I'm getting into my opinion a little bit, but
But that's actually a good another question I had, because you
Mhm.
mentioned Europe, and I do understand that in Europe they tend to take a more like stop it, investigate it, then allow. While here
Mhm.
we're more like allow, a
Yeah,
bunch of people died,
yeah,
then
precautionary.
stop it. Has there been any? I was I just did some research before the meeting, and I know that like France passed a law, but I don't think it has been gone into effect. So I don't know if you have any other. Is there any other examples of a country that have done something like this?
They, I mean, they're, I, I should know more about this. I just know that I don't know if it's because of legislation, um, or I mean, it must be, but reuse is just much more prevalent there. You know, if you're going to get a cup of coffee, there's sometimes you can get it to go in some places, but other places will only have to stay options. And you know, so just culturally, reuse has become more accepted. I know it's a hard pill to swallow for Americans, especially post COVID. The perception that reusable things are not as sanitary has still persists, unfortunately, even though that's totally not true. Um, but we're just hoping now with more awareness about our health being like uh, like a cup of water in the fridge in a plastic container is going to have like over, I think the number was like 4,000 microplastics in a 24-hour period in a just a normal room temperature.
Mhm.
Um, and just if you wanted to know, it's like a heat, acid, and fat are the three things that cause the most amount of microplastics and chemicals to leach into our food. So takeout is probably the worst of all of it because those foods are like boiling hot out of the pot, go straight into a plastic container, right? Acids and fats, right? So um, I, I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't even remember. Oh yeah, Europe. Sorry, like going on. Um,
Yeah, it was around like whether if you know
yeah.
of any country that has plastics, because I did look into France, and it looked like it was mostly similar to the New York one, where they banned plastic straws.
I think
But
they've found more broader categories of chemicals and things like
Mhm.
that. They do like think about the chemical input into their plastics a little bit more.
Oh,
They
I see.
also have, you know, they're like Europe's like a bunch of New Yorks in terms of density. So they have a lot like if we wanted a national law, it would be so difficult because we have so many different density of population in this country. But over there, it's so they even have issues about where to send the waste. So their laws are just naturally going to be a little bit ahead of ours
Hmm.
as a country. But it's a good
Yeah.
place to look, and you're right. I should know that.
Okay. I just wanted to mention so Raj joined us. Uh, good evening, Raj.
Good evening, Pedro. I'm sorry, I was struggling to join. I didn't have the correct password.
I apologize about that. I kind of just assumed that everyone knew the password, and but I think I sent it.
Yeah, you sent it. That is why I was able to join it.
Hi.
Anyway, thank you for that.
Okay. Yeah. So Rashna, if you can like send the slide, we can share it with everyone. So anyone that may have missed anything.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any questions, Raj. I don't know how much you've got so far.
No, I just got the last 10 minutes of what Rashna was saying, that we are inhaling
It's so
plastic.
scary. I'm
Oh, boy.
sorry. It is. It's just true. I just worry a lot about like a few decades from now about what impacts this stuff will have. And it's not, like I said, I went to the Plastics and Public Health Conference. It was started by a pediatrician that was noticing a lot of ADHD and autism in kids and started to research the linkages between that and microplastics and the chemicals. And now it's come into this whole conference. Used to be 1 day, next year it'll be 2 days. That's how just much material it is. But all the studies point to much higher rates of diabetes because of the microplastics, more heart disease, because plastics kind of like clump together. So if you think of your arteries, if there's already a clog forming, the microplastics will like stick to it. And they noticed when they actually studied the hearts of several people who underwent heart attacks and things like that, they that I think it was like 60 to 70% actually had a higher rate of microplastics in their body, right? So yeah, that neurological issue, like it's just, I think we are on the cusp of a huge public health crisis with this, based on the information I know. And I just think we need to protect our communities. And it's a convenience needs to be put at a little bit lower than health, in my opinion. I think convenience is good, but at what cost?
But do you think, Rashna, that people have to be educated with this? Because I'm sure 10 out of 9 people don't even know about this problem.
I know. That's my mission. That's why I
Agreed.
give this talk for free all the time. Yes. And there's lots of powerful forces that want to stop that education from taking place, or muddy the waters is actually what they like to do. It's not an easy battle, but it's a lot of the same forces that are stopping any kind of progress and improvement in society. So I always just hope it's an intersectional battle amongst many different causes to fight the same forces that are blocking, productive, healthy, helpful, nourishing, things.
Okay. But yeah, I definitely want to echo your point about we don't actually know what exactly will happen later. Because to bring it back to that gasoline lead issue that we have back in like from the 1920s up until like I think it was the 70s or 80s when we started doing it. Many years later now, there's a lot of research that goes back into what kind of effect that had, and I highly recommend that everyone look into this. But it's incredible. You can actually track the crime rate in America and in other countries and how it relates to the introduction of lead gasoline. And it's mostly a theory at this point, but the idea is that we know the lead essentially makes your brain, it can affect your brain development. So the theory right now is that spiking lead, because it was global, it was essentially literally everywhere, caused an increase in the crime rate for a certain period of time. And immediately we stopped doing it, the crime rate started to go down.
Yeah.
So a lot of the decreasing crime rate that we see in the 90s and 2000s is actually the theory is that it might actually be related to the fact that we stopped pumping lead into the air. And who knows what's going to be happening, what we're going to discover in 20 or 30 years from now when we look back.
Same with asbestos too. Yeah. Yep.
Asbestos was another one. Yeah, we didn't know about asbestos.
I do feel this is the next in that line. So you're spot on, Pedro.
But we are now at an hour 10.
Oh.
I don't want
I
to.
left my email in the chat, so any follow-ups at
Mhm.
all, feel free to email me or anything related to this topic. I'm always happy to answer questions.
Yeah. Now you did ask us for a resolution on this. On this, we're not allowed to have a. We can't have a vote because this is not a in-person public meeting, public hearing. But we can, however, take a straw poll, and just to see how the committee feels about asking the main board, community board, for resolution on this. So, how do you guys feel? Does someone like to make a motion on taking a straw poll for this? And just to explain it, just in case you were confused, essentially this would just be it's a non-official vote where we go to the community board next meeting and we say, hey, by the way, we're interested in this resolution, and then we will have a real vote at the meeting next month. Yes, next month.
I'm a vote no. I still need more information.
Well, right now I'm asking if someone wants to make a. Well, okay. Given there's only 4 of us, sorry, go ahead, Raj. You're gonna say something?
Pedro, can you repeat the question? I was just distracted for a minute.
I guess only 4 of us, so I guess we can just talk about it. Is anyone here interested in this resolution that they're presenting to us? I don't know if you guys read it or not.
In the upcoming meeting?
I sent you a link this morning with the sample resolution. I can put it on the. Where is the chat? Here's the chat. This is a resolution that Rashna is asking us to consider.
I mean, it addresses real public health, like health risks, and it's all valid. That's, I don't know. I mean,
Okay, I
I'd
mean,
probably, I'd
just
probably support that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll also support it. It's for the public health. Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like we have some.
You have a
We
majority.
have a majority of support from the committee. Again, this doesn't mean anything. We will bring it to the main board and we will have an actual discussion there. You're welcome to come. I don't know if you know when that is.
I would love to come, especially since I think I'm in this district.
Yeah, yes, if you're in Forest Hills, you're in this district.
Okay, perfect.
We meet Borough Hall. The next meeting is going to be on the 12th, November 12th.
Okay. November 12th. Okay, great.
Yeah, we can be in touch if you want to get a presentation or something.
Okay. All right. So I'll block that in my calendar, and I'll be in touch with you, and I'll get that answer to Maggie about. I'll probably just send it to the contact I have on email, so then she can forward it. But I'll send you some of those alternatives, and then was there any other follow up? I'll try to see what I can find out about Europe laws, but
not just Europe. I know Asia has also some countries in Asia have also become very aggressive on this.
Oh, Pedro, can you just send an email to me with I don't know the name. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, the lady, the representative. If you can send me her email just in case, because I'm not on the
yes.
webinar. I don't have that information if you don't mind.
I will send everything.
On the phone.
I will send okay, yeah, I'll send an email to
Thank
everyone.
You. Just
and
in case there's a follow-up.
Yeah, and anyone can send you questions, I assume, Rashna?
Yes, any questions at all. Yeah. I'll try to answer them before that meeting if possible.
Right. Okay.
Rachna, what is the alternative of plastics then? We hear about it so much. Bad things about plastic, but it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, let me tell you, 4 years ago, these plastic bags were banned, right? And the shops started saying reusable bags and all. But now I see in New York itself, still people are giving the plastic bags.
Yeah, and I think some places were exempt. Same thing. Small bodegas were exempt from. So similarly, you do see it. but they are no longer being caught in the sewer system at the rates they were before and affecting that. They are no longer being ingested by animals at the rates that they were before, right? So that it does still make a huge dent in the problem, which is really really good. We, like we'll take some progress over not perfect, not like perfection. But this was Maggie's question too. Like, seaweed is proving to be like a possible alternative. Seaweed based plastics, like there already are bioplastics though. They're corn or soy based. It's a little bit, it's so nuanced that I don't want to go into it so much. But they say that they're compostable, but then at very high volumes, they're actually not compostable. They're not adding any nutritional value to the compost. So you can only compost those up to a certain level. But maybe that's a first step. Like this is a 12-year phased in plan. So maybe in the first check-in at the 2-year mark, maybe a company transitions to corn-based plastics. And then they still have another 2 years before their next metric that they have to hit, right? So that's the reason it's tried to be done in a way that is actually considers the difficulties for even big companies to make such a change, right? And I will admit, I think some products are probably easier to just make leaner, but others will be harder. It's just that's a fact, especially if it's 100% plastic. But that's even another thing. Like, does something need to be like? I'll give you one more example. When I used to order clothes for my kids from the Gap. Every single piece of clothing was in a separate plastic bag. Still is that way, actually. They say it might be recycled or it's recyclable. That's all a myth, right? Now other companies are moving to it's like it's made out of paper. It's still kind of clear. It's very crinkly, but who cares? But that's an alternative. It's made out of paper. I could, if you want to see it, I could get it for you. But my point is, now and then other companies I've seen send me clothes that are not in those plastic bags. It's just the loose clothes in tissue paper. So I've seen with my own eyes in 10 years that, and this is just based on consumer demand, right? Because some of these are like, they sell organic clothes or whatever, organic cotton clothes. So they're already to a environmentally conscious target audience. And so what they do is they found a way just from consumer demand to get rid of plastic. So can you imagine if there was more motivation to more companies, then they would find those things, that innovation is like, if they can think of, a lot of the innovations we have, like we could do this, I believe, as a society, we can figure it out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
I know that I don't know if you're from India, Raj, but like Amazon, plastic bags are banned countrywide in India. So Amazon is still there, and they don't use any those plastic pillows. They don't use them at all in India. But when we ask them to remove them here in America, they're like, "Oh, but then it might get expensive, and we might have to pass on the thing to consumers." It's like, but I can't imagine you've done it at scale for a country with 1.5 billion, right? I just think they need a nudge. That's what it comes down to. I think they need a little nudge.
I think with Amazon, I've seen the reduce the use paper for packaging, and also they've also reduced the amount of box that they use. So I think they also have a drive to reduce plastic and even paper that they use when they're mailing out stuff. Because I haven't received plastic from Amazon in a long time, and I think I'd seen somewhere online where it's a goal for them as well.
Yeah.
I think most of the stuff that I get from there is like paper nowadays.
Yeah, it's paper.
But it's actually kind of strange because a lot of these companies they would actually save more money if they did this, but they don't do it just because of like inertia. Like they've been doing it this way for a long time, and they don't have a reason to switch.
And plastics is heavily subsidized.
Oh yeah, well that is subsidized by like the government and all that.
Yeah.
But it is kind of strange because you end up in a situation where like, oh, if you actually did the more environmental thing, you actually save more
Yes.
money, but you don't because you're stuck in this loop where you're not thinking about it, and all you need is like a flink to the head. And but
Yeah.
but
It's true.
I wanted to mention though that actually kind of answers one of our questions a little bit about smaller companies that might get hit by this, which is that, for example, for the cut fruit situation, yeah, maybe you cannot take that out of plastic, but if you can take out absolutely everything else in the store that's using plastic, then you
Yes.
might make up for whatever fee you're paying
Yes.
for the plastic that you do need to keep, which would
Yes.
still decrease the amount of plastic significantly while still keeping the convenience, at least until
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
different product can come along.
Yeah. I totally agree with that.
But again, I
There's a
don't
lot
want
of there are solutions. I want to give companies the ability to think of something that works for them, right? Because every company is going to be different. But yeah, we just it's too much. It's a glut. It's a glut of stuff. It's clogging everything. Our citywide infrastructure, our internal personal body infrastructure. So it's clogging it. So we need to just reduce the flow. That's all. I will zip it up then.
Hey, if nobody has any more questions, then I think we
Thank
can
you guys
call
for
it.
your time on a Wednesday evening.
No, thank you. And thank you, Raj, Maggie, Tamara. And guess we'll see you around.
Yeah, we'll see you
Yeah.
in a
Thank
couple
you.
weeks.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Thank
Cedric.
you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
Thank
all.
you
Okay.
all. Have a good one.
All
Have a
right.
good night. Bye
Bye.
now.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Bye.